Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Session 56. It is record day, and the clock starts, and I sit here, and I ponder. I had a very highfalutin topic, and it had to do with word derivation and the word ethos and pathos versus notion and nation. And the reason I back off, because I don't weigh in on heavy things, but I wonder, and this is a question that I could have solved before I sat down, about how close in definition is nation to notion. There's a famous Ken Kesey novel. He followed, I think it came after Cuckoo's Nest. And there's a movie with Paul Newman. I think Paul Newman's first directorial effort. And it's sometimes a great notion. And I always missaid it in my mind over the years as sometimes a great nation. And I think maybe that's what he was getting at. Although the movie, he used metaphor in Cuckoo's Nest, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think he used the psych ward as society, and that society, or 60s culture at the time. 60s, I think it maybe came out in the early 70s. But the notion of that society was represented by Nurse Ratched and the psychiatric thing, and that the sensitive souls, or the citizenry, were the patients, and that culture and or nation or government, whatever he was rebelling against, was the iron fist of authority of Nurse Ratched. And anyway, I think sometimes a great notion is about a sort of a dynastic family in the Pacific Northwest and their loggers. There's a famous scene that you should not look up because it's brutal, but a logging accident is involved. I haven't read it, and I may have only seen snippets of the movie. But I know Ken Kesey was also the guy who went around in a van and merry pranksters, and he was a big proponent of the LSD thing and all of that. So it definitely counterculture, and I don't... but I think all I'll say is that for those of us out there who think that this system is effed, and probably it is, and yes it is, you'd be hard-pressed to say it isn't. It's funny that the people running the system, in the system, and trying to get elected to the system are the ones saying it sucks and it needs to, change. And then there's the proponents, the people out there on the streets, like, you and me, that know something different about how we're getting along, for sure. And or that we aren't, whatever the fuck it may be. But I think the nation notion thing is, a notion is an idea, and a nation is a nationality, nation. I think that, I wonder, and I'm just riffing on an uneducated guess about the root of the words, but a nation, and why they call it the American experiment and all that, is that I'm not a big proponent for anarchy, or I am not a big proponent for let's let it all tumble down. I don't know what the answers are. I just know that it is important to have a shared ethos in a nation, minimally, and that, as populations expand and things get unwieldy, it's hard to find consensus. And you can actually consensus, though it's about half of us feel one way and half of us feel another way, and so it's not 100%, but it's 100% of those factions. And then there's the dissidents, and then the radicals, and then the apathetic, which is starting to be harder to be. I care less about the news and stuff, and a couple of things that got by me, and that's by choice, because I'm trying not to get activated. And I'm trying to lean back into the notion of being an artist is my best contribution, and not a rabble rouser or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, I have probably fairly mainstream attitudes, and maybe that's part of my problem, is that I am I've been courting the mainstream, and then that's part of my woe and why I feel bad sometimes is that, mainstream has milestones and age brackets and home ownership, these family, these things that are mainstream, and maybe they're mainstream for a reason, but if you are judging yourself against that and fall short, that can give you some consternation. And so I'm trying not to do that by absorbing too much mainstream, And I think if you aren't thinking about affecting more than who you're lucky enough to affect, one death session at a time, one view at a time, one read through of a one-man show at a time, one stand-up set at a time, one performance at a time, one handshake, how are you, at a time. If you're concerned about more than that, I think you can get bogged down and try to reach too far, and or you're just not being quote unquote yourself, and you're also taking on more than you can handle. And so the best I can think to do for what I'm working on these days is to try to make my voice uniquely mine and not concerned with any faction other than to please oneself. And that has been a hard notion in life. The Christian Catholic, I was raised Catholic, but the idea of being selfless, when clearly reward for the selfish is everywhere in our culture, and just how much a monetized, how much monetizing of everything. If education is important, then why are we hearing? How many times I've been to a high school reunion, or not a high school reunion, a high school graduation, where they list off awarded over $1 million in potential scholarships. It's like, cool, the kid did really well, and someone should be helping him out, and maybe he's an academic stud or an athletic stud, and scholarships come there. But to hear dollar amounts out of high school graduation, but then in the same breath, the dude in the robe and the valedictorian make the same damn speech about making a contribution, we're going to miss these years, all those cliches. All of it's in conflict. All of it's in conflict, and all of it is in contrast to each other. And so I'm getting a little in the weeds here, honestly. All I know is that I worry about the audience, and that's probably been a downfall. But also, when you go from being an actor only to then being a writer and a producer and an actor or a stand-up comedian, where you're four-walling. Four-walling is a phenomenon or just a way to basically term that you're the producer and the performer. You're the whole shebang. I think it goes. It's a term in. It's a term in Vegas, I think, that may have been coined by George Wallace, because he's been four-walling forever in Las Vegas, which means he's not being paid as an employee of a casino. He rents the showroom and four walls, meaning he's renting it, promoting it, profiting, and or suffering the loss. And so if you're four-walling, like I guess independent artists, or you are a little bit more, it's the risk reward thing. You are on your own, and that's a scary thought. When you're an actor, though, you're hoping to get hired, and so you can't control any of the controllables, because you have to be selected, And it's dawned on me that a lot of casting and acting coaches and stuff, they're going to tell you, and even your agent will tell you, well, it's tough nowadays. You got to do your own material. So then an actor will get his friends together and do a short and put it up, and then what? And I think what they can't tell you is you have to become something. You have to become an entity. Because it's a football Saturday, college football Saturday, and I have cut the cord. I am using an antenna now, so I can't even pause and try to get ahead of the commercials, or I gotta suffer through the commercials, right? And I'm noticing that all of the commercials, 85-90% of them have main movie star, well-known actors doing commercials, when that used to be the purview of the way you would work your way up, or the way you would subsidize a theater career back in the day in New York, was to do commercials and then do theater at night, and those commercials would pay your bills. And a lot of celebrities would do only commercials overseas in Japan. If you're watching recently, Charlie Sheen was big in Japan when he was doing Platoon and all that stuff. And at his peak, and he's like, he rattled off like 5 fucking products he was shilling in Japan. The movie Lost in Translation is kind of addresses that's a character who's a movie star in America doing a commercial in Japan, because the paydays are huge and no one back here would see it, and you were cashing in on your celebrity, but you weren't catching hell or messing up your image as the kind of vibe you gave off as a movie star. And now it's reversed. So you'll see an Oscar winner on a commercial. So already, and then her her husband is now in there. And I don't know if he's a performer or not, but he's in there because they're a couple and they've become an it couple, and she's an Oscar winner. And good for him, good for her. And then hopefully, I think there's just a dude who probably read for like the guy in the store. There's a non-famous actor getting a payday, and that's who I'm really happy for. And who I aspire to be, right? I've been reading for a few commercials here and there these days. That seems to be, but it's a bad harbinger for what's going on in the industry. If an Oscar winner is doing a commercial, that means they're short of work. Or, I wouldn't even venture to say that means they're greedy. It just means that they want to work. They are at a height of popularity. They are cashing in. And maybe they're bored, but I think it has more to do with the fact that there's less being greenlit, and everybody's in this creepy freak out / pause for the cause, rather than going headlong into it. Everybody's just waiting to get wiped out by AI or by changing tastes or by something, and that's affecting me deeply. But the lesson there, and this is the only reason I brought it up, is I saw this and I'm like, okay, so an acting coach, teacher, career coach tells you got to do your own material, but what they're really saying is like, marry somebody famous so that you can then but what I'm saying is, in the casting process, that's a cute thing. That is a get, because the Oscar winner shouts out her beautiful husband, great looking guy's got this long hair, shouts out her beautiful husband from the stage. That's a thing. That's a get. The casting people are thinking outside of the box, and like, maybe we could get them as a couple. And there's no short film that you're going to shoot with your friends that's going to position you there. You can't do it. You can't be somebody that has that access or is even sort of packaged that way. And that was my efforts as a stand-up comic, were to garner some attention that way, so that when somebody said, well, he doesn't have a lot of credits. Yeah, but he's a stand-up. He's funny as fuck, and we saw him, and, he did this, that, and the other. But he's also an actor. Like, I was trying to mitigate some of my lack of fame. Do you know what I'm saying? And that is really why the Nepo thing is endemic. It is endemic. I mean, Charlie Sheen's making a comeback, and everybody thinks of him being a troubled dude with a drug problem, but he's like a third generation. He's got a famous brother and a famous father, and it's just mostly envy that we even bring it up, to be honest with you. We're all envious of people who have access. And you can also say that the hard part, and a lot of these folks are talented and attractive, and they smoke a lot of people who I've seen over the years in different acting classes, and they're good. So let's not take anything away from them. But obviously, when they're in a interview and some fucking sycophantic or envious Hollywood reporter asks them, well, how much does being a Nepo baby, how much has it helped your career? And they always want to play it down because nobody wants to be called out. But if at least if many of them are, say that the door, they can't get you the gig, but it can open the door. And I only bring this up because I think that is true and disingenuous at the same time. You can't, people don't know how hard it is to open that door, and I've been in the hallway and the door's been in reach, and then now I'm further away from the door. It's still closed, but I've gotten close to getting my hand on the doorknob, and that's without a lot of help. And so, but that door opening is a fucking mighty big thing. And so, for example, there's a show I think I'd be right for, and I have an agent, so I'm already ahead of a few people, but I don't have a powerful agent. They're hardworking. They are mid-size. They are fantastic. I'll get auditions, and it'll be 1:00 in the morning. And their work ethic alone is why I'm still and proudly I like being associated with that kind of hard work. And I turn my stuff in fast, and I am very responsive, and I could tell you actors out there a little bit about interpersonal, how to communicate, and I that's a very I have a very good line of communication, and I'm glad about it. I'd like to bring in some more work though, right? So anyway, I do a lot of hunting on my own, and so if the door is just the audition, I am trying to get even in for this show. That is, with all the back channels, I can't find out who's casting the effing thing, and I've exhausted my own efforts. And my girlfriend, who is not in the business in any way, shape, or form, has been chat GPTing it. She's been getting casting directors' names and then other casting directors' names. It changes each time. This thing is rolling along, and the sort of definitive resources, IMDb Pro, and they aren't listing it, and the people that have been referred to as potential casting directors don't have it up. Like, I'm saying, the information is not available, but it is, obviously. So, like, that's the door, is just the audition. I am still down the fucking hall. I missed out on the pilot. I missed out, and I don't per se have the stature or deserve a shot. So, like, I'm not getting into that woe is me stuff. I'm just saying I am locked and loaded. I know the milieu, you know what I mean? I even tracked down a friend who knew the author of a book that I would have imagined would have been source material. Like, I've done every kind of hunting and sleuthing I can do. And I still can't just find the casting director to even tell my agent, hey, that's who's casting, and keep an eye out. The project is out there, so they may know. It's just a very closed system. And if that closed system is just for the opportunity, then you can only imagine what having the door opened is no small thing. And so that is probably why there is a lot of ire directed at Nepo babies. But I guess if you knew that going in, then those are still all my choices. And, I don't want to turn this Death Session 56 into a grumble session about my acting career. All I'm saying is that I guess what I'm doing here on the Death Session, and hopefully continue to do, sorry about the jumble there, that might have made some noise, but someday I believe this will be a cool thing. And it is also like an effort to come to the marketplace as somebody, something, some way. And from what I've been researching, don't start, they tell you, all these tricks, and I'm trying to run before I walk. Where I got to put my energy is I have to start working on better thumbnails, which I thought were just get one cool picture, put some graphic on it, and then use the same one as a brand. But that is probably not where it's at. The thumbnail is actually episode specific. to much of the degree. Now I'm sort of finding myself in the wormhole of reaction videos. And so there's like I think I've mentioned this before, they're piggybacking on famous fucking songs and linking famous songs. Last week I talked about Sammy Hagar and Van Halen, which is not my usual path of musical taste. So like I guess this week I got to talk about Echo and the Bunnymen and Leonard Cohen, just to put in some counterbalance to Sammy Hagar and Van Halen. But the thumbnail being specific to each episode, and then you have to get a different app to make a thumbnail, and it's a lot of work that I'm trying to put work into labeling, titling, and coming up with what I'm going to talk about, although it's really just a riff off the dome. And I'm starting to think maybe Off the Dome with Carl DeGregorio is a better title. And and that's the other thing. You can rebrand, you can change course, you can kind of go that way. And it's a constant tinkering. And 56 episodes is, you're outside of the realm of tinkering, and you're kind of committed. But they also say, and the relief I have is that this stuff is all going to be getting better, and hopefully, and I'm getting more confident and looking forward to these sessions myself. In fact, maybe there are days I should probably just jump in front when I'm really feeling something, or have a real good topic. And then how you label it and what the clickable thing is and the links and all this stuff. There's a lot that goes into it on the YouTube. But what they tell you is if you're anything less than 100, you're really still just getting started, and you need to improve on your videos. So, and someday these archives will be part of the bonus of discovering the death session, because hopefully by the time things get more, I get more exposure on stuff, it'll be the new individual session episode will be what maybe got the click, and then when they go further into the data, they'll find out, oh wow, there's a bunch of these. Because I always prefer binging or having an archive of the shows I like or the podcasts I like, because it seems to almost feel like an endless supply, and rather than waiting week to week. And I think that is the promise of the internet and of streaming, and what is finally broken the back of the network. Other than sports, there is no reason to have to keep an appointment at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock and have to be anchored to this appointment viewing. Now, while that may be a lamentable passage that we have lost our way because we don't communally watch things, maybe that's part of it and partially true. And that everything is so customizable, and that we curate our own entertainment, we curate our own news, we curate our own belief systems, and all that has probably made us more squirrely. I have to embrace the fact that it's a double-edged sword. People who are solitary, lonely, have a lot of free time. They used to listen to talk radio and or that kind of thing. And now you can, listen to podcasts and things and watch YouTube channels. And it is an endless supply, you know what I mean? And it plays a trick on your mind, because these are roughly 28 to 30 minutes long. And that's thousands of hours. If I did 52, about 1,000 hours. But think about 1,000 hours, like times how many people uploading there's actually like more content than time on the clock. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that is a mind field, and it is a time-space continuum kind of trip. I'm tripping out on that thought. You know what I mean? That you couldn't sit down and watch everything that's available. So then think about how hard it is to be selected. And maybe that has always been the case. We just didn't know it. But when there was gatekeeping and only one place to broadcast or three places to broadcast, and if you were making movies and things like that, it's daunting. You know, I mean, ostensibly the Double Diamond Award is beyond platinum. So Double Diamond is, I think, 10 million. And there's a few albums. There's a bunch of albums. Born in the USA would be the one I'm most fond of. Out of that double diamond album, the Born to Run. I mean, Born in the USA. Apparently, like Alanis Morissette, that's a double diamond. Bob Marley's Legend, the greatest hits, that's a double diamond. Billy Joel's greatest hits, that's a double diamond. Fleetwood Mac, I think, is a double diamond. Thriller, obviously, and so on and so forth. But that's still. And that's 10 million units sold. And now the streams are getting up into individually being viewed with the billions of views. But that's just the clicking. And that's pretty incredible. But think about like a movie, getting a butt in the seat in the movie. All movies sort of flop, even if they're hits. It's the money you have to put in to advertise, to get people to come out of the house to sit down. And then, you know, based on population, most people don't see these movies, and they're hits, you know. And so the promise of the internet is now there's more selectivity, and there's less competition there's more competition, but there's less curation and funneling, and there's so many outlets that there will never be, like the amount of people watching the final episode of Cheers. There'll never be that again. Maybe the Super Bowl gets that. And I don't know what's lost or what's gained. I just think that what happens is and back to the Notion Nation ethos, pathos, it's the loosening of the centralized ideals. It's the loosening of the centralized mores of a culture. And so it feels like an unwinding or an unraveling, and it feels to a lot of people like things are coming apart. And I think it's just the splintering effect of everybody wants an open floor plan, so they have to blow out a wall. And at first, before you're finished, all you did was take a sledgehammer and you blew out a wall and you're through the drywall, and it's just fucking a disaster. You're doing demo on the place, and it's not gonna look right until you get to that finished product where you got the countertop and you can watch through your kitchen into the living room. You've made the great room, and you spend I would probably spend months looking for the perfect bar stools, and maybe on one side you need a shorter bar stool, but then on the other side you need a taller bar stool, and all the things. But when you're blasting through the wall to make the open floor plan or to make the island, you've put chaos into your home, and you can't really feel right about it. And then you're hanging the tarp and all that shit, and then you're trying to fucking make your coffee maker is on the fucking next to your fucking where you keep your mail, and it's a fucking disaster until the build out is finished, and then you have to make new pathways of now the coffee maker can go out there, and I can sit there and I can check my fucking email here, and we can do potlucks, and I can watch TV while I'm cooking, and all these things. But maybe if I'm trying to make sense of what I'm saying, is that the splintering and the decentralization that everybody is now saying is a lament that we're losing. Walter Cronkite, we used to just know. It's like, maybe, yes, I think what's happened is we're knocking a wall down, and we haven't yet reconfigured. And then there's a arms race to be the first to sit at that counter, the first to control what's the next permutation of this thing. And there's a kind of a gold rush or a wild west, as you were, because people on YouTube they call it a channel, and ABC laughs. These people are calling their shit a channel. Like, we're a channel. We're channel 7 in New York and 7 in LA. Like, that's ABC, baby. That's a channel, or Discovery. That's a channel. Like, we do Naked and Afraid or whatever, right? And that's a channel. But like, and I have very few followers or constituents, but I have a channel, and it's liberating to a degree, because this is the means of production and the means of distribution all in one, and it freaks out the powers that be. And it also freaks me out because I was sort of trying to apprentice and trying to get through the system. And even my dad used to say, man, you would have been working as an actor already if it was the studio system. They would have swooped you up and paid your salary, and you would have played like, this guy, that guy, like Bogey. He came out of the studio system. He was literally talking about when they used to basically pay a salary to an actor, and it could be 10 movies a year, until another demolition of that studio system where they broke the wall down and said, we're free agents. We're going to represent ourselves. There was United Artists, and I think it was Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford and those people. And they said, no, we'll work on, we'll do multiple movie deals, but we're going to basically be individuals and individual channels, individual actors, to break up the studio system, to break up the cable monopoly, the network television monopoly. And then, of course, there's going to be, somehow they're going to consolidate, and YouTube may be democratically one place, but it is the place. And, there's no competition for it, other than social media platforms. So it's exciting. It's exciting and daunting for me, because I just, I'm at this place where I'm not sure what my work future is. And I know you have to work, you have to earn, and you want to trade hours for dollars. And that's tough. That's a tough one. And I've done it for a long time. And how do you move forward, and how do you monetize things that are literally things you're doing on your own time in your living room? And that's the promise of it and the excitement of it, and why also the gold rush being that there's, I don't know, the data it'll freak you out when you hear how many uploads. Like, I'm going to upload this after, but I schedule it for a few days away. But every day the uploads to YouTube are, it's in the tens of millions per day, and you can't watch everything, and you can't, And so I think the lament is that, that you could get everybody to watch Cheers, but it was really just a few people, and then you tack on nepotism, or you tack on connectedness, or wherever, and I say this as someone who went to a really good school that was trying to at least give myself a leg up that year, and that was a privileged perch, but it's a long career, so and that would then mitigate what happens to the leg up that some of the nepos get. And again, it's a tough way to mollify if you're working hard. It just doesn't work out that way. It's a meritocracy, maybe, but for every Michael Jordan, there was a Len Bias, and Lenny, what was his name? The notion that the hard part is that there are. It's either a working actor, famous person, or nothing to most people, and they don't know that it's a pursuit, it's a craft. It's there are years of toil and productivity that don't add up, and that the talent must be the only ingredient. But and I've used this example before, and I forget who it was. I know it was Jack Lemmon, but he was in a play called Mr. Roberts, which was about a Navy captain, I think, beloved Navy captain. And it started out as a play, and his name's on the marquee, and he's walking down the street with another actor, and he goes, feels pretty good, huh? And he's like, yeah, no. And he's like, you think you're hot shit, don't you? He's like, well, I'm on the marquee and Jack Lemmon, and he's like, the guy, and starring Jack Lemmon, Mr. Roberts. Yeah, look at that. And the guy said, don't get it twisted. I'm sure he didn't use that terminology in the 50s or the 60s. But he said, don't get it twisted. There's 1,000 guys who could have done it just as well as you. So you just be grateful you got the gig, but don't let it make you think anything other than, you got the opportunity. And that's a reality from that anecdote that I've clung to. And it's what one of the biggest frustrations of my pursuit is that we all know, I know in my heart of hearts, and it's probably why I've hung in as long as I have, is that there are a couple roles that obviously other people just wouldn't be able to do, but there's also roles that people could have smoked those roles, and if given the chance, there's a lot of a surety in my abilities. It's just very hard to prove without the gigs, but you got to know that you're ready to go at any point, and hopefully give yourself the grace that there is some good fortune. Yes, hard work. If I can't submit my years of toil as hard work, then I don't know. And I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm literally just at the edge of running out of options. Like what other recreation can it be? And letting it go or continuing. I don't know. I know that's hard to say out loud and to even broadcast, but if, famous actors had moments of doubt, then what do you think a non-famous actor's moments of doubt would be? And frustration and anger. I don't have a lot to be angry about in my day to day, but it's more of an anger of like, I can rock the mic. I know I can rock the mic. And so to put it, as we wrap up, to put it back on the positive tip and to say a gratitude is, imagine this 50 years ago, a guy like me, and not being able to say what he's got to say to a camera with his own lights to broadcast. What an opportunity we have today that we didn't have before. And I have to shake it up. I have to break the fucking wall down. I have to do demolition of the old ways, my old identities, my old patterns, and I got to get through the rough part where you're breathing in the plaster dust, and you got a cratering hole in the wall that's going to soon be the cutout that's going to make your kitchen / TV room just pop, and you're going to be able to have people over, and you're going to be able to put the crock pot on the counter, and everybody's going to be able to do chili, and you can set up a buffet. But till you get there, you got to go through the demolition and the construction. So I don't know I don't know if I even put the sledgehammer through the wall yet, but I know that the new configuration has to happen, and this is a big part of it. Only a year in, what would I expect? But I am minimally going to, quote unquote, die on my sword, with my boots on. I'm not going quiet into that good night. I am going to say my piece, while I can, while every technology is available to me, and for as long as I can, and also, try to, summon the will again to sort of make that championship run, that one more run up the stairs, like Rocky and like Jim Valvano. One of the coolest things I heard about him, among the many things, in his own words, the dude was a very charismatic speaker, Jim Valvano, and but that he, first day of practice, the year they won the title, he had them rehearse cutting down the nets, which, coming from my sort of trepidatious background of thinking, that would seem like a jinx to me. Like, shoot, that's like asking for it. And he was saying quite the opposite. It's audacious, and it will put a muscle memory. We're going to do this at the end of the year. I mean, that's heavy. And that's, before I go, I'm not going to show it to you because I think it's kind of personal, but I have made a dream board. I did go to Staples and I printed out these images I screen grabbed off the computer, and they're cliche images, the bird flying, things like that, and whatever my particular hopes and dreams are, I put them, and I got right here. I got a glue stick, and I was doing arts and goddamn crafts in my house at my age. I got poster board. I got some extras. Anybody wants to do theirs, I have a whole you can't just buy one sheet of poster board, but yeah, so I did the dream board that I was contemplating. And so and I've also reached out to another theater to see about renting space there. So again, back to what we're here for. And so we're going to knock the wall down. We're going to try, and we're going to keep going. And we're going to maybe cutting the nets is also putting the dream board up. And so anyway, I'm just thinking, and we're going to make it work. And that's the ethos, is to keep pursuing. All right. Peace. Death Session 56.